The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers and clattered against the concrete as I heard my wife Beth's voice drift through the thin garage wall. "He's completely clueless, Mary. I swear, sometimes I think he'd be lost without me telling him which end is up." I froze beneath the hood of my pickup truck, oil staining my work shirt, listening to her phone conversation through the kitchen window. 22 years of marriage, and apparently I was the town idiot. "No, seriously," Beth continued, her voice carrying that familiar tone of superiority she'd perfected since landing her job at Morrison and Associates law firm. "James thinks he's so smart with his little electrical company, but he wouldn't last a day without me handling the real business." My jaw clenched. Real business? I'd built Tate & Sons from nothing, wiring half the houses in this godforsaken Midwest town while she sat behind a desk filing papers and flirting with lawyers in expensive suits. "I'm telling you, Mary, if I walked out tomorrow, he'd fall apart completely. The man can barely operate the washing machine." That's when I heard the kicker, a low chuckle that made my blood run cold. It wasn't coming from the phone. Someone else was in my kitchen, laughing at my expense. I wiped my hands on a rag and crept toward the side door, keeping low beneath the window. Through the gap in the curtains, I saw Beth leaning against the counter, phone pressed to her ear, while my brother John sat at our kitchen table like he owned the place. His perfectly pressed shirt and smug expression made me want to put my fist through the glass. "Tell Mary I said hi," John said, loud enough for the phone to pick up. "And tell her James is even more pathetic than we thought." Beth giggled, actually giggled, like some teenager with a crush. "Did you hear that, Mary? John says you were right about everything." My hands shook as I backed away from the window. John, my own brother. The golden boy who'd always gotten everything handed to him, who'd charmed his way through life while I busted my ass building something real. Now he was sitting in my kitchen, talking about me like I was some kind of joke. The front door slammed, and I heard my 17-year-old daughter Bree's voice echo through the house. "Mom, can I borrow $50? Dad's being cheap again." "Your father doesn't understand that appearances matter, honey," Beth replied. "When you're older, you'll realize some men just don't have what it takes to provide properly." I'd heard enough. I slammed the hood of my truck down hard enough to rattle the windows, then stomped through the garage door into the kitchen like I'd just gotten home from a supply run. "Hey there, brother," John said without missing a beat, that politician's smile spreading across his face. "Just stopped by to see how the family's doing." "How thoughtful," I said, grabbing a beer from the fridge. "Don't you have your own family to check on?" "James," Beth snapped, "don't be rude. John was just telling me about his new contract with the Morrison firm. Apparently, they need electrical work done on their new building." I took a long pull from my beer, studying my brother's face. Morrison and Associates, Beth's firm. How convenient. "That's great, John. I'm sure you'll do a bang-up job." I let the sarcasm drip from every word. Funny how these opportunities just fall into your lap. "What's that supposed to mean?" Beth's voice had gone sharp, defensive. "Nothing at all, sweetheart. Just admiring my brother's networking skills." John stood up, straightening his tie. "Well, I should get going." "Thanks for the coffee, Beth." James. He nodded at me like we were business associates instead of blood relatives. After he left, Beth turned on me with fire in her eyes. "What is wrong with you?" "John was being nice, and you acted like a complete ass." "Nice?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Yeah, John's always been real nice." "You're jealous," she said, crossing her arms. "You've always been jealous of your brother's success, and now you're taking it out on me." Success. I set my beer down hard enough to slosh foam over the rim. "Is that what we're calling it? At least he doesn't come home covered in grease every day, complaining about how the world owes him something." The words hit like a physical blow. 22 years, and this was what she really thought of me. Not the man who'd worked 60-hour weeks to buy this house, to pay for dance lessons and soccer camps and college funds. Just some blue-collar loser who didn't measure up to her standards. You know what, Beth? You're absolutely right. I grabbed my keys from the counter. I'm going out. Don't wait up. Where are you going? I paused at the door, looking back at the woman I'd married when we were both 19 and stupid enough to believe in forever. Somewhere I'm appreciated. The door slammed behind me, and I drove straight to Murphy's bar, where the beer was cold and nobody gave a damn about appearances or success or any of the other bullshit that seemed to matter so much these days. Carl Robertson was working the bar, his weathered face creasing into a grin when he saw me. Jimmy Tate, you look like hell. Feel worse. I slumped onto a bar stool. Whiskey. Make it a double. Carl poured without comment, then leaned against the bar. Want to talk about it? My wife thinks I'm an idiot, my brother's apparently her new best friend, and my daughter thinks I'm cheap because I won't buy her a car that costs more than most people make in a year. Sounds like Tuesday to me. Carl's dry humor was exactly what I needed. What's really eating you? I told him about the conversation I'd overheard, about John's smug face in my kitchen, about Beth's casual cruelty. Carl listened without interruption, occasionally refilling my glass. You know what your problem is, Jimmy, he said finally. You're too damn nice, always have been. You let people walk all over you, then wonder why they don't respect you. What am I supposed to do? Start acting like my brother? Become some slick-talking asshole who steps on everyone to get ahead? Maybe. Or maybe you just stop being such a doormat. I stared into my whiskey, seeing my reflection distorted in the amber liquid. Beth said I wouldn't last a day without her. Carl snorted. Beth hasn't done an honest day's work in her life. She's got no idea what you're capable of. Try me, I muttered. What's that? Nothing. I finished my drink and stood up. Thanks for listening, Carl. Anytime, brother. And Jimmy, don't let them make you into something you're not. But don't let them walk all over you either. I drove home through empty streets, past the houses I'd wired, the businesses I'd kept running, the life I'd built with my own 2 hands. Maybe I wasn't smooth like John or educated like Beth's lawyer friends, but I was real. I was solid, and I was done being treated like I didn't matter. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. Beth's car was gone, probably out with her girlfriends, complaining about her pathetic husband. I sat in my truck for a long moment, staring at the windows of the home that suddenly felt like a prison. Tomorrow, I decided, things were going to change. I just hadn't figured out how yet, but I would. Because if there's one thing 25 years in the electrical business had taught me, it's that every system has a weakness. Every circuit has a breaking point. And I was about to find theirs. 3 days later, I was replacing outlets in the Morrison & Associates building when I overheard something that stopped me cold. I was working in the supply closet adjacent to the break room, hidden behind shelves of legal documents, when Beth and her friend Mary walked in. I can't believe how easy this has been, Mary was saying. James still has no clue about you and John. I froze, my screwdriver halfway into an outlet cover. Keep your voice down, Beth hissed. Someone might hear. Relax. It's just the electrician, and he's probably too stupid to understand anyway. My hands clenched around my tools. The electrician, like I was some anonymous service worker instead of the woman's husband. John's getting impatient, Beth continued. He wants to make things official. What about the girls? Bree's already on board. She thinks John's sophisticated, successful, everything her father isn't. And Bee's away at college. She'll understand eventually. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, my own daughter choosing sides against me. The timing has to be perfect, Mary said. You need to make sure James looks like the bad guy. Make him lose his temper, do something stupid. Then you can claim emotional abuse, get a better settlement. That's the beauty of it, Beth laughed. He's so predictable. Push the right buttons and he'll explode. Then I get the house, half the business, and alimony. And John gets you. We both get what we want. I stayed hidden until they left, my heart pounding so hard I was sure they could hear it. 22 years of marriage, and it had all been a lie. Not just the affair, the whole thing was a setup. A con game with me as the mark. That evening, I sat in my truck outside John's house, watching through his living room window. Sure enough, Beth's car was parked around the corner, hidden from the main street but visible from my position. Through the gauze curtains, I could see two figures embracing on the couch, my brother and my wife. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. Not for some dramatic confrontation, I wasn't that stupid. But Carl was right. I'd been too nice for too long. If they wanted to play games, I'd learn the rules. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to the county courthouse. Public records, property deeds, business licenses, all the boring paperwork that people like John and Beth never bothered to read carefully. What I found was interesting. Very interesting. John's electrical license had expired 6 months ago. He'd been bidding on jobs, including the Morrison contract, without proper certification. That was a felony in our state. Beth had been using the firm's credit card for personal expenses, lunches with John, shopping trips, even a weekend getaway to Chicago that she'd told me was a work conference. And Mary, sweet Mary, who'd been so helpful in planning my wife's betrayal, had her own secrets. Her husband's construction company had been getting electrical inspections signed off without the actual work being completed. Guess who'd been doing the fake inspections? My brother John. I spent the rest of the day making copies, taking notes, building a case. Not for court, I wasn't ready for that yet. But knowledge was power, and I'd been powerless for too long. That evening, I came home to find Beth in the kitchen, making dinner like nothing had changed. "You're home early," she said without looking up from the stove. "Finished the Morrison job today." I watched her face carefully. Interesting place to work. Very educational. Something flickered in her expression, but she kept stirring the sauce. "Oh? How so?" "You meet all kinds of people. Learn all kinds of things." I sat down at the table, in the same spot where John had been sitting 3 days ago. "Speaking of which, your friend Mary stopped by the job site. We had a nice chat." Now she turned around, wooden spoon still in her hand. "Mary was there? Very friendly woman. We talked about family, relationships, the importance of trust between married couples." Beth's knuckles went white around the spoon handle. "What exactly did she say?" "Nothing specific. Just girl talk. You know how it is." I smiled, enjoying the uncertainty in her eyes. She did mention that she and her husband are having some problems. Something about his business practices. I wouldn't know anything about that. Of course not. Why would you? We ate dinner in uncomfortable silence, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Bree joined us halfway through, chattering about school and friends, oblivious to the war brewing between her parents. "Dad, can you drive me to soccer practice tomorrow?" she asked. "Mom's got plans." "What kind of plans?" I asked Beth. "Just errands, nothing important." "I'm sure." I turned back to Bree. "Of course I'll drive you, sweetheart. We should spend more time together." After dinner, Beth disappeared into the bedroom to make phone calls. I could hear her voice through the door, urgent and worried, but couldn't make out the words. Didn't matter. I knew exactly who she was calling. Around 10 o'clock, my phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Meet me at Murphy's in an hour. Come alone. J. John." My dear brother wanted a face-to-face meeting. How thoughtful. I texted back, "See you there." Murphy's was nearly empty when I arrived. John sat in a corner booth nursing a beer and looking like he'd aged 5 years since our kitchen encounter. Good. Jimmy. He stood up as I approached, hand extended like we were old friends. "Thanks for coming." I ignored the handshake and slid into the opposite seat. "What do you want, John?" "I think there's been some misunderstanding." Beth said you've been asking questions, making accusations. Have I? I don't remember accusing anyone of anything. John's politician's smile faltered. Look, I know this is awkward, but we're both adults here. These things happen. These things. I leaned back in my seat. You mean adultery? Fraud? Conspiracy to commit theft? The color drained from his face. What are you talking about? Your electrical license expired in March, Johnny. You've been taking jobs under false pretenses. That's a third-degree felony in this state. You don't know what you're talking about. I also know about the inspection reports you've been falsifying for Mary's husband. Want to guess what the penalty is for that? John's hands shook as he lifted his beer. What do you want? Want? I laughed, genuinely amused. I don't want anything from you, brother. I'm just making conversation. This is insane. You're talking about destroying my career over some marital problems. Marital problems. I tasted the words. Is that what we're calling it? Here I thought we were talking about my wife and my brother conspiring to rob me blind. It's not like that. Then what is it like, John? Explain it to me. Help me understand how screwing your brother's wife is somehow noble. He couldn't meet my eyes. Beth and I, we connect. We understand each other. You understand each other's bank accounts, you mean? That's not fair. Fair? I stood up, leaning across the table. You want to talk about fair? I worked my ass off for 22 years while you glad-handed your way through life. I built something real, something solid, and you decided to take it because you could. Jimmy, please. But here's the thing, Johnny. You made one crucial mistake. What's that? I smiled, and for the first time in weeks, it felt genuine. You underestimated me. Both of you did. I left him sitting there, probably calling Beth before I even reached my truck. Let them panic. Let them wonder what I knew, what I was planning. Because the truth was, I was just getting started. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in psychological warfare. I didn't confront Beth directly or make dramatic accusations. Instead, I became the perfect husband, attentive, helpful, interested in her work and her friends. It drove her absolutely crazy. You're acting weird, she said one morning as I brought her coffee in bed. Weird how? I don't know. Different. Like you're planning something. I'm just trying to be a better husband. Isn't that what you want? She studied my face suspiciously. Since when do you bring me coffee in bed? Since I realized how lucky I am to have you. The doubt in her eyes was delicious. She'd been expecting anger, confrontation, the emotional explosion that Mary had coached her to provoke. Instead, she got kindness and attention, and it was driving her insane. I started showing up at her office with lunch, chatting with her coworkers, being charming and friendly. The women loved it. Beth, your husband is so sweet. But I could see the panic building behind Beth's smile. Meanwhile, I was systematically documenting everything. Bank records, credit card statements, phone logs, emails. I hired a private investigator, a retired cop named Tom Bradley who owed me a favor from when I'd rewired his house for free after a kitchen fire. Your wife's not very careful, Tom reported after a week of surveillance. She and your brother meet at the Riverside Motel every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon. Always pays cash, always uses a fake name, but she's got a distinctive car. What about Mary? That's more interesting. She's been feeding information to your wife about your business accounts. Looks like she's got access to some financial databases through her husband's company. Can you prove it? Already am. Give me another week, and I'll have enough evidence to put all three of them in serious legal trouble. But legal trouble wasn't enough. I wanted them to feel what I'd felt. The humiliation, the betrayal, the crushing realization that the people you trusted most were your worst enemies. The opportunity came sooner than expected. Bree's soccer team was having their annual fundraiser dinner at the school gymnasium. The whole town would be there. Parents, teachers, local business owners. Beth had been planning to attend with me, playing the role of supportive mother and devoted wife. Perfect. I spent 3 days preparing, making sure every detail was exactly right. The timing had to be flawless. The night of the dinner, Beth wore her favorite dress, the blue one that John had bought her for their Chicago trip, though she didn't know I knew that. She looked beautiful, confident, ready to charm the crowd. "You clean up nice," I told her as we walked into the gymnasium. "Thank you." She seemed surprised by the compliment. "You look good too." We mingled with the other parents, made small talk about soccer and school fundraisers. Beth was in her element, laughing and socializing, playing the part of the perfect wife and mother. John arrived fashionably late, as always. He worked the room like a politician, shaking hands and making promises about supporting the team. When he reached our table, he greeted Beth with a careful, platonic hug. "James, good to see you." His handshake was firm, his smile practiced. "Beth tells me business is going well." "Can't complain." "Speaking of business, how's that Morrison project coming along?" A flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. "Fine. Everything's on schedule." "That's great to hear. I was worried there might be some licensing issues." The smile faltered completely. "What do you mean?" "Oh, probably nothing. Just some paperwork mix-ups at the county office. You know how bureaucrats are." Beth's hand found mine under the table, squeezing tight, warning me to back off, or maybe just nervous about the tension building between her husband and her lover. The dinner progressed normally until the speeches began. Parents and coaches took turns thanking sponsors and volunteers. Then the principal called for any additional remarks. I stood up. "I'd like to say a few words, if that's okay." Beth's grip on my hand tightened. "James, what are you doing?" "Just being supportive, honey." I walked to the front of the room, accepting the microphone from Principal Martinez. 200 faces looked up at me expectantly. Friends, neighbors, people who'd known me for decades. "Good evening, everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm James Tate, Bree's father and owner of Tate & Sons Electrical. I've lived in this town my whole life, and I've always believed in the importance of community, trust, and supporting one another." Polite applause. Beth looked like she might be sick. "Tonight, I want to talk about integrity. About the difference between appearance and reality. About how sometimes the people closest to us aren't who we think they are." The room grew quiet. People sensed something coming. For instance, my brother John has been telling everyone about his big contract with Morrison and Associates. What he hasn't mentioned is that his electrical license expired 6 months ago, making every job he's bid on illegal. Gasps from the crowd. John half rose from his chair, face flushed red. "James, stop," Beth hissed, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "I'm also concerned about some of the financial irregularities I've discovered. Credit cards being used for personal expenses, inspection reports being falsified, that sort of thing. The kind of behavior that destroys trust in our community." Now people were turning to stare at John, whispers spreading through the crowd like wildfire. But the most disappointing discovery has been personal. "You see, I've learned that my wife Beth has been having an affair with my brother for the past 8 months. The gymnasium erupted. Shocked exclamations, chairs scraping against the floor as people turned to stare. Beth went white as a sheet. "They've been meeting at the Riverside Motel twice a week, using company credit cards to pay for their romantic getaways. My wife's friend Mary has been helping them plan their little deception, including coaching Beth on how to manipulate me into a bad divorce settlement." "You bastard!" John shouted, finally finding his voice. "You can't prove any of this." I reached into my jacket and pulled out a manila envelope. "Actually, I can. Bank records, motel receipts, photographs, recorded conversations. It's all here." I opened the envelope and began pulling out papers, holding them up for the crowd to see. Photos of John and Beth entering the motel, credit card statements highlighting suspicious charges, copies of John's expired license. The really sad part, I continued, my voice carrying clearly through the stunned silence, is that they thought I was too stupid to figure it out. My wife told her friends I wouldn't last a day without her, that I was clueless, pathetic, beneath her notice. Beth was crying now, mascara streaking down her cheeks. James, please stop. You're embarrassing our daughter. I'm embarrassing our daughter? I looked directly at her. What do you think you've been doing for the past 8 months? I turned back to the crowd, most of whom were staring in fascination at the real-life drama unfolding before them. The good news is that I've already filed all the necessary reports with the state licensing board, the district attorney's office, and the IRS. Justice will be served through proper legal channels. John was on his feet now, pushing through the crowd toward the exit. Several men blocked his path, friends of mine who'd heard enough to understand what had happened. The other good news, I said, is that effective immediately, I'm withdrawing my financial support for anyone involved in this betrayal. Beth, you'll find that your credit cards have been canceled, and your access to our joint accounts has been revoked. John, I've already contacted your current clients about your licensing issues. And Mary, I smiled at the woman who'd been cowering at a corner table. Your husband might want to check his business insurance. I believe fraud voids most policies. I handed the microphone back to Principal Martinez, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world. Thank you for your time, everyone. Please enjoy the rest of your evening. The walk back to my table felt like a mile. Beth was sobbing openly now, her carefully constructed facade crumbling in front of the entire town. Bree sat frozen in her chair, staring at me with a mixture of shock and something that might have been respect. Dad, she whispered as I sat down, is all of that true? Every word, sweetheart. Mom's been cheating on you with Uncle John. Yes. Bree looked at her mother with disgust. How could you do that to Dad? To our family? Beth tried to speak, but only managed a strangled sob. Around us, the crowd was buzzing with conversation. Some people looked scandalized, others sympathetic. A few seemed genuinely entertained by the drama. Carl Robertson appeared at my elbow, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. Jimmy Tate, you magnificent bastard. That was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Thanks, Carl. Buy you a drink after this circus wends down? I'd like that. John had finally managed to push his way to the exit, followed by several angry parents who'd apparently had their own dealings with his company. Mary was nowhere to be seen, probably already on the phone with her lawyer. Beth stood up shakily, her dress wrinkled and her makeup ruined. I'm going home, she announced to no one in particular. No, I said calmly. You're not. What do you mean? I mean the locks have been changed, your belongings are packed in boxes on the front porch, and you're no longer welcome in my house. You can't do that. It's my house too. Actually, it's not. The house is in my name, purchased with my money before we were married. My lawyer checked the paperwork very carefully. This is insane. You can't just throw me out. I'm not throwing you out. You made your choice 8 months ago when you decided to betray our marriage. I'm just making that choice official. Bree stood up and walked around the table to stand beside me. Dad's right, Mom. You did this to yourself. Beth stared at her daughter in shock. Bree, honey, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You cheated on Dad with his own brother, and now you're trying to play the victim. That's not... It's complicated. No, it's not. Bree's voice was steady, mature beyond her 17 years. It's actually pretty simple. You broke our family, and Dad's just cleaning up the mess. Beth looked around the room desperately, searching for support or sympathy. She found neither. The crowd was dispersing now, parents gathering their children and heading for the exits. The show was over. This isn't finished, James, she said, trying to summon some dignity. Yes, it is. I stood up and put my arm around Bree's shoulders. It's been finished for months. You just didn't realize it yet. As we walked toward the exit, I felt lighter than I had in years. The weight of deception, of pretending everything was normal while my world crumbled around me, was finally gone. "Dad?" Bree said as we reached the parking lot. "Yeah, sweetheart? I'm proud of you. Thanks, kiddo. That means everything to me." Behind us, Beth was still sitting at our abandoned table, surrounded by empty chairs and the wreckage of her carefully planned deception. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Divorce proceedings, business reorganization, rebuilding my life from the ground up. But tonight, for the first time in months, I felt like myself again, strong, capable, dangerous when crossed. Try me, indeed. The next morning brought a parade of phone calls, lawyers, reporters, concerned friends, and more than a few people who just wanted to hear the gossip straight from the source. I let most of them go to voicemail. The one call I did take was from Tom Bradley, my private investigator. "Jesus, Jimmy, you really went nuclear last night. It's all over town." "Good. What's the latest?" "John's in full panic mode. He showed up at his office at 6 a.m., probably trying to do damage control. But word's already out about his license issues. Morrison and Associates canceled his contract this morning." "What about Mary?" "Her husband kicked her out. Apparently, he didn't know about her little side business in industrial espionage. He's talking to lawyers about divorce and pressing charges." "And Beth?" "Staying at her sister's place across town. She's been calling everyone she knows, trying to spin this as some kind of mental breakdown on your part." I laughed. "Mental breakdown? Right. There's something else, Jimmy. Something you need to know." The tone of his voice made me sit up straighter. "What is it?" I kept digging into the financial stuff following the paper trail. "This goes deeper than just credit card fraud." "How deep?" "Beth's been skimming money from your business accounts for over a year. Small amounts, spread out over time, but it adds up to about $40,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. $40,000. Money I'd earned with my own sweat, stolen by the woman I'd trusted most. There's more. She's been feeding information about your clients to John, helping him undercut your bids. That's why you've been losing so many contracts lately." The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. The mysterious low bids that had cost me 3 major jobs in the past 6 months. The way John always seemed to know exactly what to propose to win contracts. It hadn't been superior business skills. It had been industrial espionage. Can we prove it? Already have. Bank records, email trails, phone logs. She's been using her position at Morrison to access confidential bid information, then passing it to John. That's a felony. Multiple felonies. Fraud, theft, conspiracy, maybe racketeering if the DA wants to get creative. I sat in silence for a long moment, absorbing the magnitude of their betrayal. It wasn't just adultery. It was a coordinated attack on everything I'd built. "Tom, I want you to take all of this to the district attorney's office, today." "You sure about that, Jimmy? Once this goes criminal, there's no taking it back." "I'm sure." After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen, in my house, surrounded by the life I'd built and they'd tried to steal, and felt something cold and final settle in my chest. They'd wanted to play games. They'd thought I was too stupid, too trusting, too weak to fight back. They were about to learn how wrong they'd been. The doorbell rang around noon. I opened it to find John standing on my porch, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive shirt wrinkled. "We need to talk," he said. "No, we don't." I started to close the door, but he stuck his foot in the gap. "Jimmy, please." "Let me explain." "Explain what?" "How you've been screwing my wife. How you've been stealing my clients. How you've been laughing at me behind my back for months. It wasn't supposed to happen like this." How was it supposed to happen, John? Walk me through the plan. He looked around nervously, probably worried that neighbors were watching. They were. Can I come in? Just for 5 minutes? Against my better judgment, I stepped aside and let him enter. He walked into the living room like a condemned man approaching the gallows. Beth and we didn't plan this. It just happened. Bullshit. I sat down across from him, studying his face. Industrial espionage doesn't just happen. Stealing $40,000 doesn't just happen. This was a coordinated attack on my life, and you were both in on it from the beginning. 40,000? He looked genuinely confused. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb, Johnny. We both know you're smarter than that. I swear to God, I don't know anything about $40,000. I watched his face carefully. Either he was a better actor than I'd given him credit for, or Beth had been playing her own game within the game. She's been skimming money from my business accounts. Small amounts over time, but it adds up. The color drained from John's face. She told me you were hiding money from her, that you had secret accounts she couldn't access. And you believed her? She showed me bank statements, Jimmy. Accounts with hundreds of thousands of dollars that she said you were keeping from the family. I felt a laugh building in my chest, dark and bitter. Those are business accounts, you idiot. Equipment purchases, payroll, operating expenses. Of course she couldn't access them. They're not personal accounts. John buried his face in his hands. Oh, God. She played me. She played both of us. The difference is, I figured it out. What do you want me to do? Nothing. There's nothing you can do. The damage is done. Jimmy, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean much now, but I am truly sorry. Sorry for screwing my wife or sorry for getting caught? Both. All of it. I never meant for things to go this far. I stood up, suddenly tired of the conversation. You know what the funny thing is, John? If you'd just asked me for help, I would have given it to you. If your business was struggling, if you needed money, if you were in trouble, I would have helped you. Because that's what brothers do. I know. But instead, you decided to take what you wanted. To destroy what I'd built rather than ask for help building your own. I was jealous. He said quietly. You always had it together, you know. The successful business, the stable marriage, the respect of everyone in town. I wanted what you had, so you took it. I tried to take it, but it turns out you can't steal integrity. You can't steal the respect that comes from honest work. I walked to the front door and opened it. No, you can't. But you can destroy your own. He stood up slowly, looking older than his 45 years. What happens now? Now you live with the consequences of your choices, both of you. Are you going to press charges? That's not up to me anymore. I turned everything over to the district attorney this morning. They'll decide what laws were broken and what penalties are appropriate. John nodded, accepting the inevitable. For what it's worth, Beth really did love you once, before all this started. Maybe. But love without respect is just sentiment, and respect without trust is just politeness. She lost both, didn't she? She threw both away. There's a difference. After he left, I called Bree at school and asked her to come home. She arrived an hour later, still in her soccer uniform, looking worried. Dad, what's going on? People have been staring at me all day. I imagine they have. This is a small town, and what happened last night is probably the biggest scandal we've had in years. Are you okay? The question caught me off guard. Here was my 17-year-old daughter, worried about my emotional state while her world was falling apart around her. I'm fine, sweetheart. Better than fine, actually. For the first time in months, I feel like myself again. What about Mom? What about her? Are you getting divorced? Yes, the papers were filed this morning. Bree nodded, processing this information with surprising maturity. Good. She doesn't deserve you. It's not about deserving, honey. It's about choices. Your mother made her choices, and now she has to live with them. What about me? Where do I live? What happens to college? You live wherever you want. Here with me, with your mother, back and forth, whatever makes you comfortable. As for college, nothing changes. Your education is still the most important investment I can make. I want to stay here, with you. You sure? It might get ugly over the next few months. I'm sure. Mom made her bed. She can lie in it. That evening, Carl stopped by with a bottle of whiskey and a shit-eating grin. Figured you might need some company tonight. Always welcome, you know that. We sat on the back porch, watching the sun set over the town I'd called home my entire life. The whiskey was smooth, the company was good, and for the first time in months, I felt genuinely at peace. So what's next for Jimmy Tate? Carl asked. Rebuild, expand the business, maybe hire some more guys. I've got a feeling I'm going to be getting a lot of John's old clients. Already happening. Morrison called me this afternoon asking if I knew any good electrical contractors. What did you tell them? That I knew the best one in the state, and he'd just become available for new projects. I raised my glass in a mock toast. To new projects, to old friends, and to the importance of choosing both wisely. We drank in comfortable silence as the stars came out. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to build something real and lasting. But tonight, I was content to sit with an old friend and savor the taste of justice served cold. 2 months later, the criminal charges were filed. Beth, John, and Mary were each facing multiple felonies, and the local newspaper was having a field day with the story. Local business owner exposes conspiracy, read the headline, complete with photos from the soccer dinner confrontation. My business was booming. Turns out, people respect a man who stands up for himself, and clients were calling faster than I could handle the work. I hired 2 new electricians and was considering expanding into commercial HVAC. But the best part wasn't the professional success or the community support. It was the look in Beth's eyes when she realized she'd lost everything. The divorce proceedings were brutal and one-sided. With documented evidence of adultery, fraud, and theft, Beth's lawyer advised her to accept whatever settlement I offered. She got nothing. No alimony, no property, no stake in the business she'd tried to destroy. This is vindictive, she said during one particularly heated mediation session. You're trying to destroy my life. I'm not trying to destroy anything, I replied calmly. I'm just refusing to reward your betrayal. I made mistakes, but this punishment doesn't fit the crime. You stole from me. You lied to me. You conspired with my brother to destroy everything I built. What punishment would fit that crime? She had no answer. The final hearing was scheduled for a Friday morning in Judge Harrison's courtroom. Beth showed up with a public defender. Her fancy lawyer friends had abandoned her once the criminal charges were filed. She looked tired, defeated, older than her 43 years. John wasn't there. He'd already pled guilty to fraud and conspiracy charges in exchange for a reduced sentence. 18 months in minimum security prison, 5 years probation, and restitution payments that would keep him broke for the next decade. Mary had gotten the worst of it. Her husband's divorce was final, she'd lost her job, and the racketeering charges meant she was looking at serious prison time. Last I heard, she was trying to negotiate a plea deal by offering information about other fraudulent schemes she'd helped orchestrate. Judge Harrison reviewed the settlement terms with bureaucratic efficiency. House to me, business assets to me, custody of Bree to me, no alimony, no ongoing financial obligations. Mrs. Tate, do you understand and accept these terms? Beth's voice was barely audible. Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Tate, are you satisfied with this agreement? Yes, Your Honor. Then by the power vested in me by the state, I hereby grant this divorce decree. The marriage between James and Elizabeth Tate is officially dissolved. The gavel came down with a sound like a gunshot. Outside the courthouse, Beth caught up with me as I walked to my truck. "James, wait." I turned around, curious to hear what she had to say now that it was all over. "I know you hate me and I understand why, but I need you to know that I never meant for things to go this far." "What did you mean for Beth? What was the end game?" "I don't know. I was unhappy, and John made me feel special, and Mary kept telling me I deserved better." "You did deserve better. You deserved a husband who loved you, who worked hard to provide for you, who put your family first. You had that, and you threw it away. I know that now." "Do you? Or are you just sorry you got caught?" She looked at me for a long moment, tears streaming down her face. "Both, I guess. At least you're honest now. Is there any chance? Could we ever?" "No." The word came out harder than I intended. "There's no going back, Beth. You made sure of that. I loved you once. Maybe. But love without respect is worthless, and respect without trust is impossible." "So that's it? 22 years and it just ends?" "It ended 8 months ago when you started sleeping with my brother. Everything since then has just been cleanup." I climbed into my truck and drove away, leaving her standing alone in the courthouse parking lot. In my rearview mirror, I watched her get smaller and smaller until she disappeared entirely. That evening, Bree and I had dinner at Murphy's bar. Carl cooked steaks on the grill out back while we sat at our usual table, celebrating the end of a long, ugly chapter. "So what now, Dad?" Bree asked. "What do you do when you've won?" "You keep living. You keep building. You remember what you learned and try not to make the same mistakes twice. Do you think Mom learned anything?" "I hope so. For her sake. Do you miss her?" The question caught me off guard. Did I miss Beth? The woman who'd shared my bed for 22 years, who'd given birth to my daughter, who'd been my partner in building a life together? "I miss who I thought she was," I said finally. "I miss the marriage I thought we had." But the real Beth, the one who could steal from her own family and laugh about it with her friends, number. I don't miss her at all. Carl brought our steaks, perfectly grilled and still sizzling. We ate in comfortable silence, 3 people who'd weathered a storm and come out stronger on the other side. Later that night, I sat in my home office, looking over the books for Tate and Sons Electrical. Revenue was up 40% from last year. We had contracts booked through the end of next year. The business that Beth and John had tried to destroy was thriving. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "I heard about the divorce. I'm sorry things didn't work out. If you ever want to talk, call me." Sarah Mitchell, my high school girlfriend who'd moved back to town after her own divorce 6 months ago. We'd run into each other at the grocery store a few weeks back, had a pleasant conversation about old times and new beginnings. Maybe someday I'd take her up on that offer, but not yet. I had a business to run, a daughter to raise, a life to rebuild on my own terms. I deleted the message and closed the books. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to prove that James Tate was nobody's fool. But tonight, I was content to sit in my own house, surrounded by the life I'd built and defended, knowing that I'd faced the worst betrayal imaginable and come out victorious. Beth had said I wouldn't last a day without her. Turns out I'd lasted a lifetime. 6 months later, I was installing new lighting in the renovated Morrison & Associates building when I overheard 2 lawyers discussing a case. Whatever happened to that electrical contractor who got arrested last year? John something? Tate, he got out of prison last month, but nobody will hire him. Word is he's working construction in the next county, making minimum wage. What about his brother? The one who exposed the whole thing? James? His company's doing great. Just landed the contract for the new hospital expansion. Guy's a local legend now. I smiled to myself as I finished wiring the conference room. Local legend. I liked the sound of that. That evening, I picked up Bree from soccer practice and drove home through the town where I'd spent my entire life. Past the houses I'd wired, the businesses I'd kept running, the community that had rallied around me when I needed support most. "Dad," Bree said as we pulled into our driveway, "I'm proud of you." "Thanks, kiddo. That means everything to me." "You know what the best part is?" "What's that?" "You didn't let them change you. You're still the same dad you always were, honest, hardworking, decent. They tried to make you into something ugly, but you wouldn't let them." She was right. Beth, John, and Mary had tried to drag me down to their level, to make me into the kind of person who fought dirty and played games and destroyed lives for personal gain. Instead, I'd simply refused to be a victim. I'd gathered evidence, followed the law, and let the truth speak for itself. I'd fought back, but I'd fought clean, and I'd won. As we walked into our home, our sanctuary, I felt a deep satisfaction that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with justice. They'd tested me, pushed me, tried to break me, but I'd proven something important, both to them and to myself. When someone says you won't last a day without them, when they underestimate your strength and your resolve, when they think they can walk all over you because you're too nice or too trusting or too weak to fight back, there's really only one appropriate response. Try me, try me, try me, try me, try me, try me, try me,